My 18-volt Ryobi circular saw has been an impressive tool, and I'm really happy with it. But will I be just as happy with this compound miter saw that only uses 18 volts? Opening the box reveals one charger, one 4 amp hour battery, a sawdust catcher. These look like 2 handles, a clamp, some other type of handle, maybe the pull handle, and the instruction manual. And then we have to lift this styrofoam to get to the actual compound miter saw inside. With the upper portion out of the way, we see the compound miter saw. Here's the exhaust port for sawdust, the turntable, the sliding arms. The 40-tooth carbide tip saw is already mounted. This is the shield, place for the 18-volt battery, and an off and on switch. Do note that this will be taking up a bit of space in your workshop. 32 by 21. Prior to removing the saw from the box, you're going to release the cable tie that's here, and there's another one here. Before you cut this one though, make sure this pin is in position, otherwise the head will come up and it could hit you in the face. And even after we remove this, we still need a handle to lift the unit up, because we don't lift from here. This is not a carrying handle. This is just for bringing the saw up and down and sliding it. This is the carrying handle, which is in your box. Top, there's the handle, and there are the fasteners for it. Word of advice, put the fasteners in some kind of compartment where you won't lose them, because if they fall in here, it's going to be a pain to get them out. You grab your handle. There's a side that has 6-sided opening for the nut to go on, and then the other side is for the screw. And the handle has a mouth on one end and just plain handle on the back end. That opening goes towards the blade, so it'll go on like that. Put your fastener up here, put the nut here on the other side, and then start tightening. And as long as you hold the nut here, all you have to do is use the Allen tool to tighten it, and that's it. It'll lock into place. And then we do the same thing for here. Before removing from the box, we need to decide where we're going to install this unit. Is it going to live permanently on a workbench where it's going to get bolted into place? Or is it going to be on a stand like this one? The Rigid Professional Compact Miter Saw Stand. Now we're going to lift the unit out of the box so we can attach mounting brackets so we can put it onto our miter stand. Take care to protect your back. It's not advised to use this saw on the ground without it being properly secured. Next thing to do is to add the table extensions, and there are 2 of them, one for either side. How do you know which one goes in the right place? Well, when these holes line up with this, it should be flush with the front, like this one would be. So you know this one goes on the left-hand side, this goes on the other. You should have found some fasteners that come with the kit. Everything's pre-assembled. You just drop this into the back of the handle, go through. On the back side, you're going to put this locking nut, and there's a little holder back there, so you just hold it in place inside that holder, and then start turning. And to secure it, we can use the included blade wrench. I'm placing a board to give myself some additional room underneath, and I'm going to start this by putting in the locking nut in position, and then starting the handle upside down so I can actually tighten it and catch the thread. And then you can use the tool to start fastening it. I'm going to go to my hex, which just makes this a little easier. Okay, and now we're ready to put in the other nut and fasten it. Using this 5mm hex is a lot easier than trying to use the blade wrench, since that has a Phillips on one end and the hex on the other, and this one gives you the advantage of both, so I could switch depending on what I needed. It's a nice reach that you can get with this tool versus what you can get with this one, which is only up to here. With the table extension in place on both sides, we are now ready to get some mounting brackets on this so that we can mount it on our miter stand. With the Ryobi securely mounted onto a miter stand, we're ready to release the last cable tie. Again, make sure this pin is fully inserted, otherwise it could spring up and hit you when you cut the tie. With the tie out of the place, we pull the pin, holding on to this handle. We slowly release. The blade comes up. You can remove this piece of paper, this from our channel. To remove the foam, you simply come over to the slide lock, loosen it up, grab the handle, push forward, and now your styrofoam block is free to come out. At this point, there are only two things left to install. One is the bag that's going to catch the sawdust that gets kicked up by the blade into the chute, or you could put a vacuum hose here instead of the bag, but for now we're just going to go with the bag. Then we have a clamp. This is a friction clamp. It just drops into place behind the fence, and when it clamps down on something, that friction holds this in place. And you can ride the clamp up and down for the size of the material. You can just swing it out of the way, or you can take it out as you please. And this clamp will fit on the other side of the fence also. Of course, you could buy probably another one so that you have two on your tool. Before we can actually use the saw, we got to make sure that the blade is square and perpendicular to the surface. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring down the saw blade, lock it into position. We're going to use a carpenter's square, place that against the fence, take it up to the blade, and see if it's even or parallel all the way across. If it's not, then you're going to have to make some adjustments. To make the adjustment, we remove our clamp so we have room to work with, and then we take the partial sliding miter fence, loosen the handle for that, move that out of the way. That reveals the socket head screw, which is here. And there's also another one here. Using your blade wrench, you're going to loosen this bolt, and then you're going to adjust this fence so that it is parallel with the square. Once that is true, then we're going to lock these down, return your sliding fence back into position, lock that off, and if you need to, you can do the same adjustment to the other side. You'll put the square on this side, check, and if it's out, you'll make an adjustment here and here. Next, we make sure that the blade is square to the miter table by using a combination square. We lay the square down, we come up against the blade, Make sure that you don't catch the washer, that you're actually on the blade. And this edge should be parallel to the blade. It should be in constant contact, as the same with the miter table. If it's not, then you have to make an adjustment. To make this adjustment, you're going to have to loosen the bevel lock knob. About a quarter turn should do. Then we're going to go to the positive stop adjustment screw, and there's a lock nut on it. You're going to need a 10 millimeter wrench to loosen that lock. Then using your blade wrench or by hand, you're going to adjust this either clockwise or counterclockwise until your blade is true. Once you've established that the blade is true, you lock it down, lock down the bevel lock knob, and check once again to make sure it's square. When you're done with all your adjustments, make sure you place the blade wrench back in its holder. It's a little rubber grommet that it goes into, and it's only located behind the left fence. Before we can operate the saw, we should know what all the parts are. The base, this needs to be secured, bolted down, either to a work surface or to a stand. Then we have the table extension, which extends the table out a few inches so that when you have material, it has somewhere to lay out on. You see this line? Your hand should never be inside this line. It should be on the outside for protection against the blade. Then we have the miter fence. Behind the miter fence, we have a clamp that can be removed and placed over on the right side of the fence. Further down from that is the partial sliding fence. There's a lock knob behind it, and that allows you additional fence for material that needs support, but usually you're in this position and locked off. Next we have the miter table. Below it, the miter scale with an indicator of where it's set at. Currently it's 0. This is called the control arm, which meets with the miter lock handle. You turn the handle to release. It still won't travel until you squeeze this lever. Then it will go to a detent position and lock off on those. If you want to go somewhere else, you can, and then you would just turn this lock handle clockwise if you want to keep that setting. Otherwise, you come back to 0. There's also the ability to go in between the defaults. So right now, it won't click on any number. It's sort of like a free form dial it in yourself. That's the second lever that's underneath the control arm. If you disengage that by pressing on the outside lever, then it defaults to 0, 15, 22.5, 31.6, and finally 45. Once you've set it into a position, make sure you lock the miter in place so it doesn't move. This is called the throat plate, which extends the full length of the cut, and that should always be in place. To the right of the saw blade, we have a fence that has a scale on it. We have our no hand bar. You should not be inside of this. If you need to hold material inside this area, then perhaps you should use the clamp that just drops in on the back side. And of course, we have our table extension. Up above, we have the saw that's encased in a lower guard and an upper guard. As you bring the blade down, the lower guard opens up to reveal the blade. Should you need to switch out the blade, there's the screw that you'll need to remove in order to gain access. You should not defeat the operation of the lower guard, as it's there for your safety. Further back is the carrying handle, and this is the only handle you should use for carrying the saw. Of course, you need to lock it down into position There's also a lock here for the slider. When disabled, you can move the slider back and forth. When locked, there's no more slider movement. You have your dust collection bag, slider arms. Again, only carry from the handle. To the right of the saw blade is the brushless motor. Above that, where the 18-volt battery drops into. And this is a power switch, but not for the motor. It's actually a momentary switch for turning on an LED light that lets you see where the cut's going to be made. Forward of that, we have the trigger, and it's a safety trigger. It's a two-function. You push this little lever in with your finger as you pull back to engage the motor. And should you need to, there is a opening to insert a lock to prevent operation when you're not there to supervise. This is called the D handle because it somewhat looks like the letter D. If you go forward of that, there's the locking pin. Push down on the D handle, pull the locking pin, and without releasing the D handle, just slowly raise it up, and the saw is now able to come down and elevate. You're also able to pull the saw back or forward as needed to make your cuts. Here is the spindle lock. You'll need to push that down when you go to remove the lock, nut, and washer on the blade when you need to change the blade. This saw also has a depth gauge, which is here in front of the saw blade. You set it for the amount of depth that you need. You engage that function by pulling this lever forward, and now it will stop at a predetermined height for your particular cut. When you're done with that, you push this lever in, and now the blade extends to its full depth. So you can come back later and repeat that same cut. At the very back end, we have the bevel lock knob. You turn that a quarter turn, and now you can bevel up to 45 degrees. There are no locks or detents in between, so you can just manually set that, then do a quarter turn to lock it into position. Always make sure that that's locked. A few tips for beginners: be cognizant of the width and length of your tool and what kind of adjustments you're going to make so that there are no unpleasant surprises when you move about. It's advisable to do a dry run before actually operating to make sure that things like this clamp aren't in your path. The few extra seconds that it takes to check can prevent unexpected circumstances, possible injury, and is well worth it. And never leave the battery mounted on the tool unattended, especially if there are kids around. Speaking of battery, for optimal performance, make sure the battery you're using has the additional 2 contacts for best performance. Not all Ryobi 18-volt batteries have the 2 additional contacts. By activating the LED, you can see a shadow line of where the blade's going to fall. A close-up look reveals that we were right on the line. According to the Ryobi literature, this has an electric brake, so let's see how long it takes for it to stop. That seems like a very long time for a blade to be spinning before it comes to a full and complete stop. And while I realize that there's a danger in suddenly stopping a blade, it certainly could have stopped much faster. The first piece we cut was 5.5 by 1.5. Now we're going to cut something a little bit wider, 9 by 1.5. As you see, it's clamped down. We draw the blade all the way back, fire it up, wait for it to come to full speed, then we'll try our cut. Nice clean cut. Problem that I have with this blade is that when you first go to push forward, it binds, and that's not the blade that's binding, it's actually the slider. For some reason, it just doesn't want to start moving quickly. Once you get going, the rest of the slide is pretty smooth, but at the beginning, it doesn't want to release. And yes, this is loose. So that's just a real problem for me, because what it causes you to do is to put a lot of pressure here, pushing forward. So instead of starting a smooth cut, you're hitting hard into the blade, and it shouldn't work that way. And yes, I've tried lubing this a little bit more, even though it already came pre-lubricated. And again, the issue is just with the initial push. Once you go beyond that, then it's fairly smooth. But for whatever reason, it just really doesn't want to get going. And I don't know what can be done about that. Here are the two pieces that we cut. You do get a little bit of blowing out at the back end, but that's to be expected. Smooth otherwise, so very nice blade. Once you get the blade going, it works great. I'm really impressed that they can do so much with just an 18-volt battery. I like the fact that it's not too big, not too heavy. And for me, the fact that it's cordless is just great, because it gives me mobility and one less thing for myself or others to have as a tripping hazard in the work environment. So what do I think of the Ryobi sliding compound miter saw? I like the concept. I like its price range. Yes, it only bevels to one side, but that's a simple fix. You just turn your material around and you've got your bevel. So that's not an issue for me. The one big issue for me is the fact that when you go to push the slide, it is buttery smooth. That's not a complaint, that's a compliment. That's the way it should always work. Unfortunately, you can't cut with the blade in the up position, so you have to bring it down. At that point, it no longer really wants to move. It requires a good amount of push to get it to start sliding. Something is binding. And I called Ryobi tech support, thinking, well, maybe there's something that could be adjusted, because these rails are lubed, so that's not the issue. And the lock is not in the lock mode, so that's not the issue. And basically they said, take the unit back to the store because it's defective. Yes, we are seeing double. On the left is the 18-volt brushless 10-inch sliding compound miter with the defective slide, and on the right, the new replacement. Thank you so much, Ryobi. And so in the up position, it's very smooth, but what we had problems with the other saw was in the down position. This required a push in order to get it going. This one, it still has, it's very rough. It's as if it had no lubrication, which it does. And the lock is off. See? This one's not as smooth as the other one. The other one I would say was like butter. This one, there's a roughness to it, but it's, minimal effort. But the important part is when you bring that blade down and you go to make your cut, you shouldn't be pushing into it with a great amount of strength, because then you're hitting the blade against the material, and that's not good. You want it to just cut in. I'm going to hold the base, and yeah, it binds. So you know, this is the second sample, and all I can say is that I think it's indicative of an issue that they have, at least with this particular run. Yeah, it's just, it catches. So, I like everything else about this saw except that, and that's kind of a crucial aspect of this saw, is the ability to be able to travel forward, and it should start smoothly. We're going to do a side-by-side comparison. The replacement unit is on top. The defective unit is on the bottom. Let's start with the defective unit. And it is locked in the down position. The slider is free. There is a bit of a push, but now let's release the locking pin. Pretty smooth. Now we come down to our cutting position, and again it binds. There's, I don't know if you can hear it, there's a grinding sound at the beginning of that push. So you have to push, 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 then it finally breaks, and then this part is pretty smooth, but right here, even going backwards, I can feel it. It stiffens up. Now the replacement unit, fairly smooth going across, but again, the pin is still in position. Let's remove the pin. Nice and smooth, back and forth. We come down to the cutting position, and it binds. It's that first 1.5 inches. Once I get beyond that, then it's smooth. But right there, it just hangs. So, in talking to their tech people, they say there's nothing that can be done about that. It's just the unit is defective. It's an issue that they need to deal with, and unfortunately, the replacement isn't any better than what I already have. Thank you for the great tech support again. I can't say enough. This was shipped out overnight, and that's wonderful of them, but there's an issue that, you know, if anything, it's a little bit better on that, but yeah, it's bad. Sorry, Ryobi, I really like your products. If you found this video interesting or useful, give us a thumbs up, leave us a comment, join the subscription team, and as always, thank you ever so much for watching.